Hello, Blue Jays fans, and welcome to episode 287 of the Jays from the Couch radio podcast. It's Blue Jays Talk for All, presented by JaysFromTheCouch.com. We're so thankful you're tuning in for another week of Blue Jays Talk, whether it's live on Facebook, YouTube, or Twitter. Send in those comments and questions. We'll put them up live on the screen, and you too can be part of our live recording. But if you miss it, don't worry, don't fret. It's all good. Head over to Apple, Google, anywhere you find podcasts, quality podcasts. Jays from the Couch will be right there with them. Give us a subscribe and all of that fun stuff. And we'd be ever so grateful. I'm your host, as always, Shaun Doyle. Happy Valentine's, everybody. You can follow me on Twitter at Doyle JFtC. I suppose I should say happy Valentine's to those who celebrate, because some people just don't. Not getting into that. Instead, we've got a great week of Blue Jays talk for you. We're going to look at our Major League Baseball Minute. The MLB Minute talks about Shohei Ohtani. I know it's crazy, but trust me. Actually, no, it is crazy. But we'll also talk about the the Blue Jays and their projections, whether or not they are as good as their projections, if their projections are fair, or if they're actually better. And of course, we'll follow that up with our fake news segment. And to help me do all of that, I have the Feckless Wonder himself, host of the On Feck Circle, Tuesdays at 6 p.m. Eastern Time. Steve Feck, the Feckless Wonder. How are you, sir?
I'm doing great, Sean. Happy Valentine's to you, and of course, to Karen. And a special happy Valentine's for all of those On Feck Circle fans that have suggested that I kiss a particular part of their bodies throughout the last 2 years.
I mean, yeah. I'm just going to bring in Karen. That's what I'll do. Host the Sunny Side of the Dome, Thursdays at 6 p.m. Eastern Time. Karen Suter. How are you, Karen?
I'm good, Sean. How are you?
I'm doing very well. Thank you. And starting off right, Rachel watching on Facebook says happy Valentine's to me, but she really means it to all of us. Rachel, thank you again for tuning in. You found our show. And now you're a regular, Rachel. So thank you. Thank you very much. All right. So the MLB Minute, we started this segment because I actually started running every Sunday a post at JaysFromTheCouch.com. You can check it out. That would be yesterday. And we just look around Major League Baseball, what's going on, and how does it, how do the Blue Jays tie in? And this week we looked at some possible trade targets and stuff like that. And one of the items from that we use for our MLB Minute segment here on the podcast. And this week I wanted to talk about Shohei Ohtani, the guy who stole the MVP award. I kid. Vlad should have gotten it if Ohtani wasn't out of this world with his talent and all of that. However, Shohei Ohtani. What's interesting is, and it's linked there in the MLB Minute, is that he has said there have been no discussions of contract extensions. Obviously, you can't blame media types from asking the question, right? He wins an MVP award. He's got 2 more seasons left. Making peanuts, by the way. $5.5 million for that. Ridiculous. But anyway, he has not had a discussion about a contract extension with the Angels. Now, we all know, following baseball, that the Angels are more than willing, Art Moreno's more than willing to just dump money at any issue, anytime, right? He just prints more of it, I think, and just sends it off to whomever he wishes. So money won't be the issue. I can't imagine. But this is the Angels we're talking about. They continue to dump money at people and have nothing to show for it, wasting the career of Mike Trout, the greatest player to ever play the game maybe, and they are wasting it. So, brings me to the question, is Shohei Ohtani potentially a target for the Toronto Blue Jays in a couple of years? I am not suggesting that they go out and try and trade for him now. That would be ridiculous. I'm not suggesting that. What I am suggesting is that maybe in those 2 years or a year and a half, trade deadline kind of thing, maybe Ohtani is on the Blue Jays' radar. Now, this is a guy who's easily going to make $40 million a year. Easy, considering he can play both sides of the ball, right? And his people will be looking for that. So, in our Major League Baseball minute, each of you gets a minute, and Steve, I'll start with you. Shohei Ohtani, in 2 years, probably a free agent. Is he someone, Steve, who you want, or it would be neat, or are you just saying forget it? It's not a possibility for the Toronto Blue Jays.
Well, it's a little bit of both. I would weep with joy if Shohei Ohtani became a Blue Jay, even for a week. I mean, that's how highly I think of the guys. And you know that I do follow Japanese baseball relatively closely as most people can here in North America. But the reason why it will never happen is merchandise, endorsements. Last year alone, according to Forbes magazine, $8 million in endorsements. He is not going to agree to a trade, and I believe he has a pretty strict no trade clause there. Anywhere that could affect the endorsement money that he would bring in. So that is why. I mean, I think that's a big part of why a lot of players, big name players, don't sign in Toronto, not because of, border crossings and going through all that kind of stuff. It's all about endorsement opportunities for the big name stars. And I think being the only Canadian franchise, there's the perception that if you're playing in Toronto, you're not going to get the big endorsement dollars. So that's why I would say never going to happen.
Right. Interesting, because I read a thing where he said he's trying to get used to seeing his face everywhere and being a quote unquote star. That's very interesting.
Yeah, but he reads his bank statement at the end of the month, and then it erases any anxiety he might have.
Yeah, for sure. If I had $8 million, I would not even remember what the problem was by the time I finished counting it. So, Karen, 1 minute. Shohei Ohtani in 2 years.
Yeah, I mean, 8 million net, never mind 40 million. But I mean, off the top of my head, can you just stop and imagine Guerrero Jr. and Ohtani on the same team for the Toronto Blue Jays, and add to that and I keep calling them the supporting cast, but the team that they've built piece by piece, and how it's all coming together, I believe so well for the Jays. Will it ever happen? I hadn't thought of the angle that Steve mentioned, and as usual, he makes some good points. I don't know. I'd be surprised if it'll happen. I mean, we all as fans and certainly people who work in baseball are watching closely the negotiations. What's going to happen with that CBT? I mean, if they raise it the way the players want them to, or anything close to that. But even so, I mean, you've hopefully got extensions for Guerrero, Bichette, if not both, on top of the big contracts they've already got. George Springer, Jose Barrios, Kevin Gausman, and I'm not sure that there is room within all of that to add Shohei Ohtani. Not that Rogers can't afford it, but just with the CBT and what the penalties might be. And so it would be great, but it would surprise me.
Absolutely. I throw it out there because, really in 2 years, the Blue Jays are in a position where they could, in theory, take on that kind of money. With Ryu coming off the books in a couple of years, with Randall Grichuk coming off the books. Sorry. A little tickle there. I got a gritch in my throat. Yeah, so I mean, it's possible. That's all I'm saying. Is it likely? I doubt it, but it's possible. Money will be there, and you can't tell me that a need isn't there either, right? So anyway, it's fun to dream, and that's why we started off episode 287 with a dream. You know, much in the same vein as how this podcast started oh so long ago, just with a dream.
You and Martin Luther King. I have a dream.
Not even close. um, now, we are going to move into, speaking of dreaming, I'm dreaming of the postseason. We have projections for your Toronto Blue Jays. So, if we're looking at, I'm going to go ahead and use the fan graphs because that's what I'm used to. And when you're looking at, first of all, let's look at some key players here. And one of the first ones I wanted to kind of touch on Danny Jansen first. I've seen a lot over the last little while about Danny Jansen and his ability to bounce back and have a hot second half and start off cold and all of this stuff, and that's too general. I saw a tweet there. I've forgotten who it was by, but they kind of broke it down in a little more depth as to when he was hurt, and then after he was hurt, and all of that stuff. Regardless, Danny Jansen is somebody who I think Blue Jays fans are kind of on the fence about. They know the talent's there, they know the potential's there, but it hasn't quite lived up to it yet. Meanwhile, Alejandro Kirk has kind of impressed Blue Jays fans, right? So if you're looking at it kind of, it's not overly clear how people feel about Danny Jansen. So I wanted to just hit on his projections here. The Fangraphs has him hitting 234, and his defense is what is better than that, but almost 2.5 wins for the season next year. So Steve, I'm going to start with you. Danny Jansen, 2.5 wins, hitting 234, and I should note that they have him in 371 plate appearances. Obviously, a full regular season is north of 500. So they don't see him playing every day. So Steve, I guess my question to you is, is that a fair assessment of what Danny Jansen is going to produce?
I think it's a fair assessment of what he could produce. Personally, I would be concerned if he only has 370 at bats. And that's not a knock on Alejandro Kirk. It's not. I love Kirk. But Danny Jansen's defense alone merits him getting north of 450 at bats. What he has done, and last year when we were doing our game recaps, we were doing after every game there for a while before we all went crazy, trying to get it all done. I purposely listened to the out-of-town broadcast, not the Blue Jays broadcast, even though I had access to them. I purposely listened to the out-of-town broadcast, and the one topic that came up every single time, aside from Vladdy's deal, was Danny Jansen's ability to call a game, to block pitches, to instill confidence in his pitchers that he's got their back. Just throw your stuff. You can't put a value on that for a contending / championship team. His defense alone merits that he needs to be in there 5 out of 7 games. So that's my only concern with that. And if you want to, what was his power numbers out of curiosity? I mean, I never look at projections, as you all know. What was his power number?
His slugging is projected to be 443. Just for comparison, Vlad Jr.'s 598. Trying to find a more.
They didn't
Kevin
project
Smith 425.
They didn't project actual home run total.
Not on the list I'm looking at here at Fangraphs.
Okay, that's fine. No, because I mean,
Yeah.
I was drawing the comparison to Mike Zunino in my mind. Mike Zunino, another great defensive catcher, doesn't make a lot of contact, does hit the occasional bomb, usually at opportune times, but it doesn't matter. If Mike Zunino hit 150, he's still going to catch a big bulk of the games for the Rays because he's such a good defensive catcher. So my thing would be that, I think the amount of at bats, I think they're projecting low because again they're selling high on Kirk, but I think it's fair. I think his WAR, even 2.5, might be a tad low, though they don't really, defensive stats don't skew to a higher WAR, unfortunately.
All right. So, and the only thing I'll say is that Tampa Bay also doesn't have a whole lot of catching options behind Mike Zunino. So there's that. I think the Blue Jays are in a better position in that regard. But Karen, your thoughts on Danny Johnson, whoever that guy is.
Did we trade for someone?
Danny Johnson, if you're listening out there, your projections, I'm sure you will surpass them. Meanwhile, Karen, Danny Jansen.
Danny Jansen, yeah. One thing that Steve and I are mostly in agreement about. I like Danny Jansen. I always have. I think he's got a lot of talent, and I mean we've seen glimpses of it. I've written about him before that in his first part season when he was called up, he hit pretty well, especially for a raw rookie. And then in 2019, it seemed to me that the coaching staff, if anything, wanted him to focus on his defense. And I mean, he was one of the top 3 vote getters for Gold Glove that year. And actually, Steve, if I may, because I also did a piece on the Blue Jays rookie position players in 2019. And even though Danny Jansen, he just really did not have a good season with a bat in 2019, he still had a very good WAR. And that was from his defense, obviously. He did very good that way. So are his projections low? I mean, with the year he had last year, his numbers were just silly low in April, but I really think luck had a lot to do with that because he kept hitting the ball hard and having nothing to show for it, whether he just hit a ball right at guys or guys were making phenomenal plays on him. But I mean, from May 1st onward, his numbers were so good. And right now, my concern with Danny Jansen is him staying healthy because he missed significant time last year with 2 separate IL stints. And I mean, catcher, as we all know, is a very demanding defensive position. It's demanding on the body. And he's been at this for a few years now. So I'm really hoping that both he and George Springer stay healthy, never go on the IL, and each play like Springer 150 games, Jansen maybe 140 because you got to give him days off here and there. But I can see those numbers being realistic only if he ends up on the IL again. Other than that, I can see him playing a lot of the time and really coming into his own in 2022 and putting both halves of his game together, so to speak. But like you say, I mean, Alejandro Kirk is a prospect with all kinds of potential, particularly with the bat. So if Kirk isn't traded in the offseason and Jansen is your number 1 catcher, if he's healthy, then what do they do with Kirk? Does he get a lot of time at the DH spot, or I don't know. Good problems to have that they've got too much talent, knock on wood, but
That's right.
Do we see Moreno? We haven't even started talking about him. Did he make his Blue Jays debut? I'm not saying that he makes the team out of spring training, but maybe down the road, and then at this point, who the heck knows when opening day is going to be and how much down the road will there be? So
Right. And Rachel, watching on Facebook, also indicated that the defensive side of Jansen's game could be good for Kevin Gausman as well. And you know what? She's not wrong. right? Let's be real. Speaking of, I wanted to look at Kevin Gausman. And now Fangraphs has kind of split up for some key metrics here. They have him 187 innings and an ERA of 3.77, wins above replacement at 3.4, and let's see, 9.7 Ks per nine, 2.4 walks per nine, 1.3 home runs per nine. So when you hear that, Steve, looking at about 3.5 wins for Gausman, Steve, where are you? On which side of the projections are you on for Kevin Gausman? I would imagine you probably followed him closer than I did, given that he was playing for the Giants last year, and that's like a whole new time zone that my brain just can't function in.
Gausman at first, when they first were talking about signing him, and then when they first signed him, I wasn't all that excited about it. I mean, he's a good major league pitcher, but I think I was thinking more of when he was an Oriole, and he just did. When I watched him pitch, I didn't understand how he got results, but bottom line is he got results. Yeah, he found something, and I don't think it was just the Giants staff. I think he just found something in himself, and he just turned the corner, and he's become a reliable major league pitcher. I think that ERA, pitching primarily against AL East teams, you're going to play more games against division rivals than anywhere else. I think that's a fair assessment. And the home runs. Good pitchers give up home runs. It's a matter of how many base runners he has on base. So if he literally can control the walks, which he's done a much better job, I'm even surprised that they even had the walks per nine at 2. But I think Gausman, those numbers seem pretty right for me. I mean, in a lot of ways, it's still, I want to see it. I want to see him do it. But I think last year he proved it wasn't a fluke. It wasn't just a one-season wonder. Okay, he has put together a couple years together in a row, and there were more teams than the Blue Jays that were trying to sign him. So I would say that as close as projections can potentially be, I think they're pretty much right on the mark there.
Okay. And Karen, your thoughts on Gausman?
Yeah, I was thinking pretty much the same thing. I wouldn't really go over or under those projections. They sound pretty fair. And I remember I was reading someone after the Jays signed him, and somebody posted on Twitter, and it was, I forget who, but it wasn't just some random fan. It was somebody who was really in the know, and they were saying if you're looking at Kevin Gausman and thinking back to his days as a Baltimore Oriole, don't. That he's just there's something that he's improved. Whether is it his slider that's his like crazy out pitch, that he somehow did something to improve the quality of his slider. And it's at the point where it might be as sliders go, it might be one of the better ones in all of baseball. So I'm really glad the Jays got him. I know all of us here were hoping for a reunion with Robbie Ray, and it's really unfortunate that it didn't happen. But I think he's, as a quote unquote replacement goes, I think it's going to be, I think it's going to be just about a wash. That they're both very good. Robbie Ray won a Cy Young, and Kevin Gausman, for the year he had last year, seems like he could have. So,
right. I think the ERA might be a little generous, but I'm picking nits at that point. You know what I mean? Like Steve mentioned, pitching in the AL East, he's done that before, and didn't look overly bad doing it.
Different pitcher.
That's what I mean, right? So anyway. So I wouldn't be surprised if his ERA were a bit higher than that, but I think it's a fair assessment. And the last projection, I think what we'll do, like we'll come back to maybe several of these as the weeks go on. Can't let's not have all the fun now because, as Karen said earlier, who knows when this lockout ends? So, but I do want to get to one more, and that is our guy Kevin Biggio. Hopefully, first of all, needs to be healthy. That's the first and foremost. Like, there's nothing that nothing is relevant to this conversation if he's not healthy, because we saw what happened when he's not healthy. Whether or not it was a chicken and egg thing, like, did the injuries cause his bad defense, or does his bad defense kind of hurt him? I don't know. Who knows? I joke, of course, probably not, but. So let's say healthy, first of all. And they have Kevin Biggio at 357 plate appearances, which is actually lower than Danny Jansen. So, first of all. Batting average of 227. 227. On-base percentage, though, 337, which is more what we're used to seeing from him. And overall wins above replacement at 1.3. So, Steve, I'll start with you quickly on Kevin Biggio. Are all of those as low as they feel?
They're well below where they should be. And again, I understand why they would project out that way based on the most recent season and all the injuries and the struggles that he had. But this is an opportunity for Kevin Biggio to reestablish himself. He has the talent. He has the defensive abilities. It was only 2 seasons ago that he was considered the 5th best second baseman in Major League Baseball, not just in the AL, in Major League Baseball, by all these people that are doing projections and all this analytical stuff. I don't understand why, even as the fan base, people are so down on Kevin Biggio. He had a tough year. He was injured. He struggled at the bat. The injuries play into that. It's hard to say. Kevin Biggio, I think I said this, and I know that Karen and you also agree, though Karen and I probably went a little further, that I really think that within 2 or 3 years, Kevin Biggio is going to have a higher WAR than Marcus Semien is. So I think Fangraphs got this one wrong, but but again, they're using math. They're not using eye test or actual probabilities of outcomes. They're using straight math to project out based on what they saw last year and earlier in his career that's what's going to happen. So I understand why they did it. They're dopes, but I understand why they did
it. I mean, I think it's all coming from the fact that he did have such a poor year and didn't have a foundation of several years of success underneath all of that from which to draw, right? And then he gets hurt and has such a bad year. Honestly, maybe the numbers don't know what to expect, given all of that, right? And I'll be honest, as much as I love Kevin Biggio, that might be fair to not know what to expect. It could be way up here. It could be here. It could be somewhere in the middle. I don't know at this point. Karen, what are your thoughts on the projections for Kevin Biggio?
Yeah, I mean, I'm with Steve. I really think that Biggio is a much better player than what we saw last year. I think he played hurt for most of all of the season, and as much as Marcus Semien brought to the Toronto Blue Jays by his own performance, by whatever influence he had on Bo Bichette, poor Kevin Biggio was just miscast as a third baseman. He wasn't making those throws. I'm sorry to say he was kind of a disaster over there. But I mean, if there's a silver lining to Marcus Semien going elsewhere, slide Kevin Biggio back to second base. That's where he's good. I mean, his defense there was above average. And I think another reason why a lot of people undervalue Biggio is, and a lot has been written about this, apparently he hasn't had a lot of success against high velocity that some pitchers can throw. I don't know. That's not me, but other people who are in the know have written about that and all of that. But to me, Kevin Biggio just brings so much to the game. I mean, he gets on base. His knowledge of the strike zone is just insane. I mean, he's so smart in the way that he does things. He's a smart base runner. He might not be a burner, but you rarely, if ever, see him make a mistake on the base paths. Like just the things that he does. I mean, I remember going back to 2019. There was a day that they played a shift on him, and he turned it into a double in the way I think it was a bunt double, if anything, that he bunted to go against the shift, and then they didn't get their defensive ducks in a row, and he just went on over to second and he was safe. I just think Biggio brings so much to the table. I hope he's the everyday second baseman in 2022. I hope and believe that he will bounce back. And as I said, I think Marcus Semien's a really good player. I don't see him as a +6 WAR player, going forward. I see him more as a 4, and I can see Biggio as somewhere in the 3s or 4s as an everyday player. So I think the gap between the two of them on the payroll sheet, there's a huge gap. On the performance, I see the gap being much, much smaller. And I don't think the Blue Jays will suffer for having him as their everyday second baseman again.
I don't either. And Rachel's watching again on where is she watching? Facebook. Thank you. Biggio walks a lot, which can be a good asset in the right place in the order. And I think Rachel, unknowingly sparked something up here. And maybe that is how you use Kevin Biggio, moving forward. Karen, you mentioned miscast as a third baseman. Maybe miscast as a leadoff hitter. Maybe miscast as a number 2 hitter. Maybe instead you should be looking at him at the other end of the lineup, similar to what's his name there, Tony La Russa always loved to have a leadoff hitter in that 9 spot, right?
Yeah.
So maybe there's something to that. And Rachel, I'm gonna noodle that a little bit and see if I can tickle the keyboard here in the next few days to come up with something there. I like that idea about his usage. And Kevin, also watching on Facebook, Kevin Sienna likes the idea of Biggio and Espinal platoon. And I'm not sure how I feel about that one, because where platooning where exactly? Now, if the Blue Jays manage to land a Jose Ramirez or a Matt Chapman for third base, then the platooning idea obviously is going to be something that they look at more. But if they don't, and Espinal is a third baseman and Biggio is a second baseman, there's not much platooning to do there, right? So I think that depends on the rest of the roster. And the other thing that we should mention about Kevin Biggio is that when he's right, that's a left-handed bat that the Blue Jays don't have, right? So there's something to be said for that. The last thing I wanted to touch on the actual overall projections for each team in the AL East. And because we're running out of time, I'm going to just jump to the first 3 because those are the only 3 that matter. So finishing third, the Zips projection for the American League East. Finishing third, Tampa Bay Rays at 88-74. I can buy regression from the Rays. Absolutely, I can. I have no problem suggesting that their pitching is going to be dynamite. However, I wouldn't be surprised. They have your Toronto Blue Jays, 89-73 in second place. Now, of course, that's almost a 64% chance of making the playoffs, which, cool. Then in first place, they have the New York friggin' Yankees at 90-72. So here's what I'm going to say. As far as the projections go, first of all, the Yankees are not going to win 90 games. They're not. Even if you look at, okay, there's some time after the lockout, there, to sign whatever they need. Well, look at the starting pitching that's remaining. You're not finding ace after ace after ace out there. So what are the Yankees going to do? Then, of course, Giancarlo Stanton and Aaron Judge, two guys who are incredibly dangerous, but incredibly hurt all the time. And then you've got the massive question mark that is Gleyber Torres, who they will not allow to go anywhere near shortstop. If they're playing, no matter what dugout they're playing in, home or away, they're going to make him walk the long way to second base. Go behind the plate all the way, because there's no way they're letting him anywhere near shortstop. And don't get me started on Gio Urshela. There's no way that guy is a regular, everyday Major League Baseball third baseman. So
I disagree. Totally disagree. But that's another show.
Fair enough. So all that to say, New York Yankees 90 games, winning 90 games. Toronto Blue Jays 89, Tampa Bay 88, the Red Sox 83, and the Baltimore Orioles 64. Not losing 100 games, but still.
Yes.
So very quickly, Steve, what do you make of that AL East, the standings, the projected standings?
Well, first, let me say, when there are more than 200 free agents still not signed, why do you release projections? I mean, seriously. We don't forget the CBA. There are 200 unsigned, unassigned players that they have not accounted for. So these projections mean nothing. We might as well have just gotten the bingo game and started picking numbers out of the bingo thing to decide who's going to get what wins. Yeah. I agree the Yankees aren't going to win 90 games. I think they build into that the fact that they've got players that they're probably going to be able to move to get pitching. Luke Voigt, they've got, a backlog of some outfielders that are major league ready, but there's no slot for them. So I think that plays into that. But when I looked at the Blue Jays projection, at the risk of being a homer, last year, the Pythagorean win total for the Blue Jays was 99. And that's based on runs scored, runs allowed, plus a couple of little things here and there. So you're telling me, statistically, analytically, that the Blue Jays are now 10 games worse than they were projected out to be last year? Now, I don't think so. I don't see, barring some major signings or trades by the Yankees or the Red Sox, the Rays are going to fleece somebody in the Austin Meadows. They're going to fleece somebody for Austin Meadows. They're going to get Kevin Kiermar's contract moved. They're going to fleece somebody, and they're going to move up there. But to not have the Blue Jays in first place, considering they've done the bulk of their big ticket shopping already, I don't get it. So once again, to paraphrase our friend AJ Andrews always says that Twitter is stupid, analytics are stupid. Analytics are dumb.
Yes, and Twitter is
analytics are dumb.
I agree, especially in I think your point about the Pythagorean win-loss, like they're not 10 games worse than they were last season. That in and of itself, is reason enough to think the projections are low. And then, of course, add in whatever they might do when the lockout ends. But Karen, I want to give you the opportunity to weigh in on the 89 win Toronto Blue Jays.
Yeah, no, that's low. I'm sorry. They're going to be in the 90s, and no, the Yankees are not going to be a first place team. I mean, their rotation is Garrett Cole in a great big hole. I mean, no. Tell me I'm wrong, please. Like how they were one win better than the Blue Jays last year, I still don't even really know. But no, It's not going to be the Yankees. And I think they're underrating the Rays. I don't want that to be the truth, but honestly, I think if I had to predict the standings right now, as you said, with so much more to happen, free agents, never mind players that are going to be traded. I would have that. I would reverse that. I would say the Rays first, maybe the Jays second, but definitely as a playoff team, and the Yankees even maybe not third. Maybe the Red Sox would be third. I don't know, but yeah, I'm hoping the Jays will win the division. I certainly think they have a good chance again, depending who else they acquire. If everybody stays healthy, knock on wood. And yeah, I'm I'm expecting a good year, but it's not 89 wins. Come on, where are you getting that from?
I wish I could go back in time and rename this episode 287, the coal in the hole. This is just, it's a perfect description. In fact, I'm going to contact several Yankees sites and say, listen, here's a new headline for you.
Uh-oh.
Coal in the hole.
They'll be blocking me on Twitter.
Oh, no, that's all right. They're Yankee fans. Does that really upset you, Karen? All right, it is time. I'm in a great giddy mood for it. All right. For our fake news segment, I have to say the response to the fake news segment has been awesome. We started it on a whim, and I enjoy doing it. We enjoy doing it, but we enjoy more that other people enjoy it as well. So, without further ado, Jays from the Couch presents Fake Blue Jays News. Steve, over to you.
Thank you, Shaun. And my screen just went blank, so I'm going to have to wing it. As with most revenue streams, the addition of small logo advertisement on Major League player uniforms has become a major bone of contention in the current CBA negotiations. Now, regardless of the outcome, the Blue Jays are already making plans to unveil their choice of a sponsor logo once an agreement is finalized. F1, which for those of you that don't know is the worldwide governing body of open wheel Formula One European kind of racing, will become an official sponsor of the Blue Jays, and the patches on the uniforms will probably be some facsimile of the F1 patch. But they will develop a special patch commemorating the Grand Prix of Toronto in the month leading up to that race. That special patch will reflect the course design of the race, which has a Blue Jays tie-in. They're going to redesign it each year based on the fly ball routes tracked by Lourdes Gurriel on StatCast. Now, F1 and race planners were a little concerned about the danger of using that as a way to lay out a racetrack, but they're going to take special care to select the routes that will prove not to endanger driver or spectator safety. So, congrats to the Blue Jays for getting that first sponsor on board. Now, Ross Atkins has received high praise for negotiating skills from free agent pitcher Kevin Gausman and his reps. Gausman said, from the very first contact, I was immediately impressed by the polite yet strong interest Ross Atkins showed during the negotiations, explained Gausman. From Ross's first pretty please to the repeated, come on, or you're killing me. It was clear that Ross was determined to sign me and not take no for an answer. But Gausman said the tactic that sealed the deal was the emphatic, suck it, Robbie Ray. We're going to sign Kevin Gausman. That convinced me that Toronto was the right place for me and my family. Over to you, Shaun.
I'm still laughing at trying to picture a little patch on the uniform with an F and then a big old infinity sign or something next to it. Ooh, okay. Now, as we all know, we are recording this episode on Valentine's Day, the most romantic of all the holidays, save for Columbus Day. For Valentine's Day, the Blue Jays front office received a steady flow of flowers, chocolate, cards, and massage oil, all the usual fanfare. People close to the scene told Jays from the Couch that all the cards had the same message. Don't replace me. You love me. You need me. Signed, your fifth starter, Ross Stripling. Whatever it takes, you know? I mean, some people have to fight for their jobs. We're with you, Ross. And finally, Jays from the Couch caught up with Hall of Fame hopeful Barry Bonds and asked him about young Blue Jays star Vlad Jr. I asked him what he thought Vlad's chances are if he continues his 2021 pace. Bonds had this to say: "No way he gets in. If I don't get in because I cheated and Clemens doesn't because we're the scapegoats of the steroid era, then Vlad Jr. can't get in either. Major League Baseball is literally changing the ball to create more offense. Of course Vlad's going to hit like that. And don't get me started on that guy who hits and pitches like that. Talk about cheating. He's not even human. If robots designed in a lab can play baseball, I should be in the Hall of Fame." Listen, Barry Bonds, he's not handling it well. That's all I can say. After, he went on record with me, we just sat and we hugged it out for a little bit. And he crushed my head. It was bad. I tried to get my arms around his head, but the steroids made it impossible. So,
well, the clear makes it really slippery too. So when you're trying to grab them,
that's right. Oh, poor Barry Bonds. Anyway, that has been Fake Blue Jays News. And we are just about out of time on episode 287 of our podcast. So I want to give each of you the opportunity to give a little teaser for this week's episode. So Steve, tomorrow, 6 p.m. Eastern time, the OnFX Circle, what have you got cooking for everybody?
We're going to talk about Charlie Montoyo. Now, I know you guys are all going to think, oh, come on. No, it's going to be a really thoughtful conversation about, I think everybody agrees this is a critical year for Charlie Montoyo as Blue Jays manager. Is he going to become Cito Gaston 2.0? Or is he going to have the fate of Jimmy Williams, who are having an extremely talented team and couldn't get it there? We're going to really look at it from a fair and balanced standpoint. There's going to be an article that I'm going to submit after the show because I'm hoping to get some response from the audience to see what their feelings are about what Charlie Montoyo could ultimately become in Blue Jays lore. So at 6 p.m. tomorrow on our YouTube channel.
Well, as long as Charlie doesn't lie about serving in any kind of war, I think he will not be the worst manager Toronto's ever had. Anyway, I'm looking forward to it, and Steve has a piece coming up tomorrow on Cito Gaston at jaysfromthecouch.com, so make sure you all check that out. And Karen, what have you got cooking Thursday for Sunny Side of the Dome?
Yeah, so lying about being in a war, is that someone related to Danny Johnson? So yeah, as we all know, those of us who follow baseball, there's not a lot happening right now. The present is pretty much at a standstill, and the future, well, who the heck knows about the future, because we don't even know what the team is going to look like. So it is Black History Month, and I thought that I would take the opportunity to take a look back into the Blue Jays past and a little bit of the present, and highlight some black people, black men, let's face it, not women, but black men who have made significant contributions to the Toronto Blue Jays up until now.
An excellent, worthwhile topic, and I can't wait to be in attendance. I get to see, the beauty of my job is that I get to watch both of your shows anyway, but I highly encourage everybody to tune into Facebook, YouTube, Twitter for each of our shows. The podcast Mondays at 6 p.m., the OnFX Circle Tuesdays at 6 p.m., and of course Sunny Side of the Dome Thursdays at 6 p.m. Here we are. We're at the end of episode 287, and I want to thank you both for joining me again this week. It was a fun episode, like we always have. And I want to thank Kevin and Rachel for watching on Facebook and contributing their thoughts as well. And Rachel even sparked an idea up here for something that I may try and get written in the next few days. So for Steve, for Karen, for all of us at Jays from the Couch, I'm going to remind you, check out the podcast on Apple, Google, Anywhere you find a podcast, you'll find our episode there. Give us a subscribe and a rate and review and all that stuff. So for all of us, this is Shaun Doyle. You can follow me on Twitter at DoyleJFtC. Hoping life gives you a juicy fastball down the middle and you don't miss it. Take care.